Kamal Bengougam is a risk taker, but it's risk for the sake of a good story as much as it is for the payoff. He's had a varied career including publishing, engineering, biotech, and he's mashed all those together to land at the cutting edge of super automated coffee at Eversys. Now, super automation is contentious. There are those who will argue that automating the coffee process rips the soul from it, but Kamal and Eversys disagree. And with the pandemic shaking the hospitality industry across the world, for Eversys, the aftermath has presented enormous opportunity. Hi, my name is Tom Andronis, and with me is Dave Burchett, and we're very excited to welcome to the Coffee Lab Kamal Bengougam, Director of Business Development and Marketing at Eversys. Welcome, Kamal.
Thanks for having me.
No worries.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Welcome back to Melbourne. It's been a while since you've been here, I guess.
Yes, it has. This little thing called COVID prevented me to visit a bit more because I really like being here. For me, it's like being in the UK. The language, the culture, it's very similar.
Anything changed since the last time you were here?
I think that people are really excited to be back in communities. So you could just see this desire to engage with people is even stronger than before.
And you're here for the Melbourne International Coffee Expo. It must be good to be sort of mixing with the industry in person again.
It's always great to be with people. I mean, the coffee industry is like a big family. And even though you have competitors, you don't really compete. You know, you're always happy to see each other and share ideas.
Absolutely. Let's get stuck in. Let's talk a little bit about your career. How did you end up in coffee from all those other things that I mentioned?
It's an interesting journey. I just think that people see life as a sequence of steps. I see it as a continuous journey. And you take the lessons that you've learned from one thing and then you carry it into the next. So to me, I see my career as a progression. In each of the things that I did, I had to learn something new. So whether it was, I started out in hospitality, so I learned about food and service. And then I went into publishing, and then I went into leisure, and then I went into biotech and e-commerce. And in every single arena that I engaged in, I developed new skills. So when people think, give a job to someone who's done that before, I don't necessarily think this is important. Look at the skill base, and that skill base can be transferred into a new field. So when I came into coffee, I got into coffee by default. A friend of mine, I've always been around coffee. A friend of mine who had a company in London called First Choice, George Miller, moved to Australia, and he developed Tiger. So he asked me to come to Australia at the beginning of his business and, look at his business and give him some ideas. And then he told me about this new company in Switzerland called Eversys that had just began its own journey. And he asked me if I was interested in meeting the people who were involved in that, and I was. So I went to Switzerland, met the guys, worked with them as a consultant for 6 months, and lo and behold, in January 2012, I joined the team.
It's a cool story. Like I feel like, when did we meet each other for the first time, would you say? 8 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
A little more. I remember when I first saw your product, it would have been at Host, and I think it was an E4M. Might have even been an E2M at the time. And I remember seeing this machine dispense 2 lattes out of one head perfectly, and it blew my mind. And I thought, what is this? And Eversys have always been a disruptor in my mind, and you're continuing to do that. So was it that innovation that attracted you to the company as well?
One of the founders, Jean-Paul Albon, is a visionary. So when I joined him, my first question to him was simple. What makes you different than the others? As I'm a marketing man, so having a competitive advantage and a differentiation was very important. Don't be a Me Too company, because then all you do is split the market. And his answer was, we want to make coffee like traditional machines. And I thought that was compelling. And I thought at some point in the future, people would want that automation without any disruption to the in-cup quality. So I thought he was onto something. So I agreed to join him on that journey because of that.
I actually remember when we first spoke, and I think I asked you, like like I was guilty of it too. I actually sort of pigeonholed Eversys into a certain segment of the market and said, who are your competitors in the market? And you said to me, everyone. We're a coffee machine manufacturer. And that sort of approach and mindset has stuck with me, and what you have continued to do as an organisation with the new technology that you've introduced, the aesthetic changes to the machine, that's been the mission from the start, it seems.
It was, but you begin from the cup backwards. So are you happy with in-cup quality? Yes, no. What else do we need to do? What is the prejudice that is left in this industry? The aesthetics. So we created a cameo and we hit the coffee hopper, because by hiding it, we started to look like a traditional machine. Then we launched the revised version of the Enigma, of the E-line, and we called it the Enigma, decoding the DNA of coffee. Powerful statement. Cameo was authentic taste and lines. So we were beginning to move our message away from just true espresso with a touch and include design aesthetics to break the prejudice. And I think we've succeeded in doing that, because people, and I don't think it's the consumer. I think people in the coffee industry look at a traditional machine and automatically assume that it makes a better cup, that it involves more craftsmanship. But I don't think it does. I spoke at a golf tournament on Monday, and I said to them, you assume that all baristas are created equal. When you look at chefs, you have head chef, sous chef, commis chef, chef de partie, depending on experience and skill. Baristas, you only have one name.
That's true.
So to me, I think that our machines are better than 80%, if not more, of baristas. You have amazing baristas that have a sensory capacity that the machine can't utilize. So yeah.
Whether we're talking about your personal career and your personal trajectory or even the business Eversys, there are a lot of risks that have been taken along the way. Why do you think it's important to take risks when they present?
I saw someone with a T-shirt at a convention, must have been 20 years ago, and it said, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking too much space. And I think risks are inherent to life. If I work backwards and I say, okay, well, what's the purpose of life? Is it to just live it like an idiot, wake up in the morning, stretch, and then live that day without purpose? Or should we have a purpose? I think we should have a purpose. And in my opinion, after all those years, I think that life should have one sole purpose, is to be a better man at the end of your journey. What does that mean? What does that look like? And I think it has to do with character. And then when you work backwards, where does character come from? It's being developed through hardship. Where do hardships come from? They come from taking risks.
And making mistakes.
So people are afraid of making mistakes. I think that mistakes are part of the journey. If you want to succeed, you have to fail first. Because if you don't fail first, how do you know what success is?
So what's been your most valuable mistake?
I've made quite a few. But, I think the biggest mistakes I've made in the past is to trust the wrong people. When you go on a journey with people, whether you get married, whether you go into a business, you need to make a good choice. And never make a choice based on need. Because when you make a choice based on need, it's always a mistake. Always make a choice driven by hope and driven by values.
So for you, is it intuition then with you, or is it that with a leap of faith as well, or?
It's all that. Some people say, well, what is really success? You need to have luck. Whatever luck is.
Yeah.
Good fortune. But it's like, the golfer Gary Player once said, is the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit like that. So I always work really hard. In everything that I do, I really work hard. I plan, I execute, I look at relationships. I'm always analyzing my performance, how I can improve it. So I do all of that. But I recognize that once in a while, I get a break. And I don't understand why that. And sometimes I do all the work and I don't win a deal. Yeah. And I also don't know why. So I call that part luck.
Yeah, fair enough. And in terms of, reflecting and analyzing everything that you've just mentioned, how do you apply that to your relationship with yourself?
Well, I think that as you get older, you cut yourself a bit more slack. You become more comfortable in your own skin. I think it's that, you start life and, you begin life with a scream and you probably finish with a whisper.
Or an expletive.
Yeah. Or an expletive. and in between, you have to learn how to be comfortable in your skin. And I think to me, that's what success is. When you finish and you think, well, I'm happy being who I am. And I look back on my life and I think, yeah, that was cool.
I suppose it comes with having those setbacks or failures along the way as well, and realising that the world still continues to spin.
Yeah, someone said to me once, never follow a leader who walks without a limp.
Yep.
And I thought that I really like that.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't failed, you have no humility. You don't have any appreciation for the goodness of life, and therefore you have no relevant message, but arrogance.
Yes.
These are profound lessons that obviously you've learned through your own experience along the way, but have you had any mentors? What sort of role has mentoring played in your life? Have you had any sort of significant mentors who've helped you?
Well, it was a bit difficult for me because I left home at 19. So I went in North America, I didn't even speak the language, went to university. And after having arrived 6 months later, I was at university with people that had spoken English all their life. So, you have to adapt really quickly to the new environment. And when you leave home, you see, because when you're born and you grow up, you have your parents, you have your family, you have your network, and they help shape you. I was a bit like a wild weed, so my way of learning was not being shaped by others. It was by making mistakes, licking my wounds and starting again.
Do you see that as an advantage in hindsight that you had over others?
School of hard knocks style.
I think it made me tougher, but I think it took longer. Okay. I think if I had the right guidance, I would probably have gone to where I wanted to be faster. But as I was saying to someone the other day, if you're going to have a mentor, choose well. Because if you don't choose well, you're going to become like them.
For better or worse.
Yes.
And now you spend a bit of time mentoring others?
Yes, I do.
Why?
And I enjoy it. I think that you need to live life for a cause greater than yourself. And if you don't pass on what you've learned along your journey, then your life you have no legacy.
So as the mentor, what do you see your role as then? Are you the unreasonable friend sometimes to people, or
are you trying to make people like yourself?
Or are you trying to make people like yourself?
No. I don't tell people what to do. I ask questions. If someone says, well, I want to do this, or I've done this, I ask them why. Because I think that, it's like when you go to a doctor, they treat the symptoms. They don't look at the root cause. Symptoms don't interest me.
Yeah.
I'm interested by the reason why people do things. And because then you can fix it. So if someone makes a mistake, you say to them, okay, why did you do this? Is it driven by an insecurity? Is it driven, and you fix it there at source. And then you see the symptom disappear. So I am the guy I'm like a mirror.
Yeah.
So someone is like talking to yourself. I ask the questions. I don't give you the answers. That's all.
So, Dave, you talked about it a little bit before, but let's move on to Eversys and what the business does. For someone who maybe has never even heard of the brand, give us the elevator pitch, if you like. What is it that Eversys does?
Well, we basically provide, coffee solutions to people who aspire to have a traditional experience without the fuss. So we automate all of the actions of a barista. and provide that beautiful experience without the fuss. So you don't have to worry about staff. You don't have to worry about ability. All you focus on is engaging with the consumer, productivity, consistency, and making money.
I've worked with Eversys, as we've mentioned, over my career, and it's produced some of the most incredible coffee that I've had. And I'm not just saying that because you're in the room. I say that to a lot of people.
I've never heard you say that.
There's an interesting phenomenon in Australia, and I suspect you would see this in the other parts of the world, where this semi-automation phenomenon, where people are buying on-demand grinders, automatic tampers, automatic milk dispensers, twin boiler espresso machines that are taking up expense, enormous amounts of real estate, and there needs to be a certain level of skill to get the benefit of having those still. Your product is that within one unit in a far more compact footprint, which I think the Australian cafe industry is really starting to look at it. Like we're seeing it now. How does that compare to other parts of the world? Are you seeing the same trend where there's almost people are looking to taste it, but there's almost a little hesitance still?
I think, someone asked me a question on Monday. I said, is England, the UK, 10 or 20 years behind Australia? And I said, well, it's not behind at all. I've been here a week. I've had great coffee and shit coffee. And that's what I get in the UK too.
Yes.
So no difference. The thing is about the prejudice. Now, I always think that when you make a mistake, release it, speak it out, don't hide it.
Yep.
So why would someone buy a traditional machine and then say, well, my baristas can't froth the milk, so I'm going to have a milk unit that froths the milk for them. Oh, and they can't stamp consistently, so I'm going to have a puck press. And then I'm going to have this, and I'm going to have that. But I'm going to call this a traditional solution because the brand, we're brand whores. So people think, I remember when I started my career, you needed to have the Hugo Boss suit and all of this. And why? It's just the brand. Break the prejudice and understand whether the prejudice is worthy or not, or justified or not. When you look at our machines, they reach the same result for less money, less space, less fuss, and lower cost. So why wouldn't you embrace it?
Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's something I've been saying to people for years. The brand thing's really interesting. It's something I was going to ask you actually. How much people value brand over reliability and quality of a product? I feel not just within coffee, within many areas of life.
Everything.
Brand is everything, right? It's the way to place value on something that's maybe not great quality sometimes. I think you've got an interesting strategy from what I've watched around the brand ambassadors that you've engaged.
Yes.
For that reason as well, because you not only have a great product, you're now building brand. I'd argue that Eversys is known as a high quality brand as well. Has that been a really noticeable reaction, having those brand ambassadors on board from the traditional segment, for lack of a better expression?
Well, that was the plan.
Yeah.
We began with Matt Perger.
Yes.
And I was thinking, and Matt was brilliant because Matt firmly believed in automation. I remember him saying to me, we need to automate all the core functions that a barista does, because this is, baristas don't know. They're not creative forces. They're factory workers. So we need to remove that. And he was right. So I'm a marketing person. So I was thinking, well, how do I break the prejudice? I'm not going to engage in the dialogue. I'm just going to develop a brand.
Yeah.
And what are my brand values? So I came up with this super traditional thing just to upset people. Because I just thought, well, we are traditional, and we're actually better than traditional because we add a layer of technology. So our machines can be utilized as a traditional machine, as a two-step machine. You can steam, you can brew the coffee, you can create your own recipes. A top barista can utilize the machines the same way they can utilize their traditional equivalent. But when you don't want to do that, you can just revert to an automated thing. So it gives you far more flexibility.
Yes.
It's like a hybrid car. You have the best of both worlds. If you're not using power, you can rely on electricity. And if you're using power, you revert back to fuel. So it's up to you. You have a lot more options than you would. So we built a brand. So Matt was the first. And I just realized that if you wanted to reach an audience, you had to utilize one of their own if you wanted to be credible. Me saying, we are as good as this doesn't mean anything to that audience because they don't know who I am. So that was the beginning of us evolving into the specialty coffee space, which is where I wanted to be, because I felt that mainstream coffee accepted us. Specialty coffee didn't. And I thought we deserved to be at the top table. I didn't want to suffer from the imposter syndrome.
There's a certain irony, though, isn't there, in a barista advocating on behalf of automation? Like, essentially, are you not putting a barista out of business?
How I came up with this just 2 days ago. I said, okay, just show me one barista that has been a barista for 20 years. Is barista a career or is it just a job? Is it something that you do at university or you do post-university and then you sort of decide to go do something else?
Well, there's many things in coffee that are unregulated, I suppose. So that it makes it hard for that reason. So the answer to your question is probably no for most people because, to your point, you can't get.
But also, there's only so far you can grow making coffee, right?
No, but I've never been into a coffee shop anywhere and seen a 55-year-old barista. They're all young, and at some point they go and do something else. So,
that's true.
Unlike a chef, where you make a career as a chef and you become a head chef and maybe you write cookbooks or you go on TV, these guys make coffee and then they get a better job.
Yeah.
They move on. So is that a career or is that a temporary job? In my opinion, it's a phase in their life where they have this temporary job and then move on to something else. So all the ambassadors that we've worked with have moved on to bigger and better things.
And so in that case, who does super automation appeal to?
Well, I think that in this world, you need to be pragmatic. You can have the soul of an artist and you can create beauty. But if you have a business as opposed to a hobby, the definition of a business, it has to be profitable.
Yes.
Where do profits come from? You need to have more money than you spend.
Yes.
What are your two biggest costs? Rent and your staff. So if you reduced your staff costs, you can become more productive. You look at Blank Street in the US, they started operating from a cart. So they had no rent.
Yep.
And they had one barista. And that barista was producing hundreds of coffees per day. Definitely profitable.
Mm.
And they're expanding the concept worldwide. So it's that. You need to be pragmatic. I'm not saying you should lose your creative soul. I consider myself an artist. Just because I work in a company that promotes automation doesn't make me a non-artist. Because either you are or you're not an artist. You're not being defined by what you do. You're being defined by who you are.
And what sort of impact can automation have on a business?
A huge impact when it's used properly. And you use the word super automatic. I call it super traditional. What's the difference in the two? Super traditional gives you that same in-cup feeling. So it's like if you compared, two electric cars. You compare a Tesla to a Porsche Taycan. Well, the Tesla is just that. The Porsche Taycan has pedigree.
Yes.
You see, so with us, we think we have pedigree. So don't compare me to other super automatic machines because our DNA, our vision, everything that we do is different. The only thing we have in common is automation.
Yes.
You can compare me to a traditional company and we have more in common because we aspire to the same thing. How do we improve in-cup quality? How do we improve barista performance? How do we improve productivity? That's what we do. How do we make better milk? How do we make better coffee? How do we adapt to the different milks that you have today? How do you program that? And that's what we do.
Yeah, I often use the analogy with people that it's if I got into a Formula One car, hoping that I don't crash, I'd probably go quickly. But compared to a Formula One driver, they'll go much faster than I would.
What?
So this is sort of the same analogy in that if you have a skilled barista, I think you've got the balance perfect where they can get the best out of the machine still and get the best out of the coffee. So there's, but if they're not on shift, the customer's going to get a fantastic cup of coffee anyway. And I think you've got the balance of choice right for business owners. I think that's the true success there, because I feel like in the past, before Eversys existed, it was one way or another. It was too divisive. You had to go traditional, or you had to just go automation where you push a button and a coffee comes out. And I think you've really bridged that gap
That was
perfectly.
always the vision. The vision in the early days, I called it blue ocean strategy. Red ocean is where the sharks eat each other. We felt that the traditional and the super automatic worlds were red oceans. So we thought, we're a new company. We can't compete in the red ocean, so let's go in the middle and try to bridge the gap between the two. So that vision was there from the very beginning. That was Jean-Paul's vision to transcend technology and to embrace tradition with the help of technology. One of the things you said before is, why would a business embrace technology? How often do we go to restaurants and one day it's great and the next day it's not, and then you don't go anymore? You go to a coffee shop, one day it's great, the next day it's not, and you don't go anymore. Consistency is as important as quality, if not more. I would rather have a slightly lesser quality, but have it consistently the same, than have peak and troughs.
Yes.
And as a business, you can't afford to have peak and troughs. You need consistency, and that's what we provide.
So you have a really wide range of machines with a lot of kind of nuanced variations.
Yes.
Give us the quick rundown of the range.
Well, the thing is, in the world that we live in today, you can't have a machine and then sell it to everyone. So all of our machines are made to order. We don't have stock because everyone has a different need. So we go from high productivity to medium productivity to lower productivity, to smaller footprint, medium footprint, large footprint, to a classic design, which is more boxy, to a super traditional design, which is more curvy. So we provide people a totally bespoke solution. So you come to us and you say, this is my business requirement. I make X amount of products. This is the type of service I have. And then we give you 2 or 3 options. So it's really customized. When people think super automatic, they think, boxes, factory, press button. It's not. You come to our factory, everything is built by hand. We build every single module by hand. We don't use any common parts apart from motors and pumps. Everything that we do is bespoke to us.
When I come to your factory and take delivery of my machine, do I get to drive it out onto the Autobahn, just like the BMW factory in Munich?
If you wanted to, nobody would stop you.
Sounds like that kind of experience.
Nobody would stop you, but it's totally bespoke. Totally bespoke.
Yeah.
And we take great pride in that. We want people to feel that everything that we do is really handmade. And it is.
And you've got the legacy soon to become available. What impact do you think that's going to make?
That's going to disrupt the market more than any other product that we've done since the very beginning. And we've been working on it for quite a while. And I remember when we first spoke about it with our R&D team, it was a big ask. But our team is amazing. When you come to our factory, you see young people, they're passionate about what they do. And they're there, not because they draw a salary, they're there because they're having great fun. I would imagine it's like working at Apple 20, 30 years ago and you're creating cool stuff. and that's how they feel. So we issue challenges and then they come back with amazing stuff. We've got people in design. Our head of design, Alexandre, used to work and design motorbikes and cars. So he has understanding of metals and nuances and colors and lines, and he does really amazing stuff. We have Jonathan and his team in R&D, and they just solve problems all the time. And they come back. First, you give them a problem. They go, I don't know if we can do this, but they do it. So you end up with a machine on a small footprint, and you You can have 4 different types of coffee, 4 grinders, or you can have 3 grinders and a chocolate or powder module. The machine can clean itself on the milk side and on the coffee side. So you just plug it in and go.
And only 10 amp of power, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, and you can use it also. At the moment, it doesn't have a steam one, but next year we'll be launching it with a steam module. So you'll also be able to craft. At the moment, it's more like one step.
Yep.
But the quality coming out of it, our DNA is the same in all of our machines. So the modular construction, the in-cup quality, the telemetry, you see that in everything that we do. So there are no... And the challenge to me is how can we produce a machine like that, like the Legacy, and make it out of metal? And it is so cool. We don't want to do plastic. We live in a world and we need to be sensitive to the world we live in. And sustainability is one of our core values. So recyclability really matters to us.
And how do you live that, the sustainability core value?
Well, in everything that we do, at work, Victoria and her team, we recycle everything. We're very careful with power, so our building that we've built is very energy efficient. We're not looking at solar power for our extension. So everything that we do embraces that. We use recyclable materials. We look at our packaging. We look at our carbon footprint. Absolutely everything is being measured. And we're being audited on that externally. So we have external audits that come at the end of each year to see the progress that we've made.
Wow. So in the future, next 5 years, what do you see as the next trends, not only for Eversys, but for the coffee industry generally?
In my opinion, as I said on Monday, one of the big changes over the last few years has been COVID. So what has happened during COVID? People started buying good machines in their homes. They started buying good coffee for their homes. So they've become quite knowledgeable about coffee. So if they go into a coffee shop and have an average coffee, they'll know.
Yeah.
And they're going to ask themselves, why am I spending $5 on a coffee?
5?
Or whatever it is, when at home, I make a better product. So I believe that the bar, the quality bar, will have to go up. So on the coffee side, coffee shops will have to make a better product than people can make at home.
Yep.
And what I see is a lot of manufacturers of traditional machines have come up with very expensive home machines. So they've seen the growth of that market. But by providing people with equipment and coffee for people at home, they have to raise the bar in the coffee shops. It's like in a restaurant. Why would I go to a restaurant when I can make that food better at home at a fraction of the price?
Or get it delivered.
Yeah.
So I think the coffee market will have to change. I think automation, the line between automation and tradition will disappear. Yeah. There is no reason that prejudice is just being fostered by companies that have an interest in maintaining the status quo. But it's a prejudice that is irrelevant and will become more and more irrelevant over time. So I see that happening. I think the quest for perfection in the cup, I think manufacturers like us, it will be about availability. You need to make great coffee available anytime, anywhere. So different formats. How do you serve coffee on the space shuttle? How do you serve coffee in the Antarctic? How do you serve coffee in a submarine? And then you look at different modes. Cold coffee, cold brew. How do you do that through a machine and speed up the process without damaging the quality? How do you do that? How do you create consistency if you have a chain that is global? How do you do that? How do you train people? How do you support that? So I see many challenges, but they're positive challenges because people will invest in this market because it's still growing. So it's worth the investment.
I think I could listen to you talk all day, but unfortunately we're running short of time. So before we let you go, we're going to ask you 3 questions that we ask to everybody. So what's your, if you could give your 20-year-old self some advice, I know that wasn't that long ago for for you, Kamal, but if you could give your 20-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
Don't do it. No, I think it would be, I think you have two forces at work in the world. You're either driven by fear or you're driven by hope. I said, minimize the fear and believe in yourself more.
And is that the greatest lesson that you've learned over your career?
Yeah. I think when I go back over the mistakes that I've made or the things I haven't done, they were basically motivated by fear. I was afraid. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of rejection. I was afraid of all those things. But those things are not real. They're just voices in your head. And once you understand they're voices in your head, you just silence them. Yeah.
And last question, if you could start...
I thought you said 3.
Yeah, this
That
is number
was
3.
only 1.
No, he asked number 2.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, did it by stealth. If you could start another business tomorrow, something completely different, what would it be?
Well, I think that in the coffee space, which I love, we've done a pretty good job developing a company in the B2B space. I think in the B2C space, on the home side, there is no innovation. The machines just have a different brand, but do essentially the same thing.
Yes.
So if I was starting a new business, that's what I would do. I would create disruption on the home front and build a machine that does something new.
Pick it up and shake it. Kamal, thank you very much for joining us. It's been wonderful hearing from you. Really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.